some ideas, some fantastic discussion. At the start of this conference, I made it clear that this was your conference. This was a members' conference, and you have engaged wonderfully. You've been asking questions through the app, as I requested you to do, and thank you very much for that, engaging in the fringe events and showing the world that this party is a vibrant, energetic, optimistic, forward-looking party. So thank you, our members. Thank you very, very much, and please give yourself a big round of applause. And on behalf of Ben and I would like to thank Pamela, the President of the National Convention and the Chair of this year's Conservative Party Conference. And in the tradition, Ben will present the bell. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. God bless you. Well done.
Ben, thanks. Well, thank you.
Do you want me to hold that for you?
Yeah, I can. That's great. Thank you. So thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, James. It's been an absolute pleasure to be the President of the National Convention this year and to chair this year's party conference, which I think has been absolutely fabulous. And I'm obviously really honoured to have been here and hosting conference in the Northwest, my home, as you've heard me say quite a few times. And what a great conference it has been, laying out a clear domestic policies and our vision for the future. Now, months of work goes into conference planning, and there are certain people without whom it would not happen. So I'd like to thank David Comerford, Angus Lloyd-Skinner, TK Sharna, Grace Jones, and Isian Hasmuji for all their hard work and commitment. It's been a great pleasure working with them over the past year. And thank you to them. The City of Manchester has been a wonderful host, and I'd like to thank Greater Manchester Police, G4S, Manchester Central and the Midlands Hotel for their tireless support. And actually, this bell is engraved, and it's really lovely, so I will treasure that with all the memories from this week. But conference is not yet over, so we will be hearing from our Prime Minister later this morning. You may have heard. Yay! Woo! But first, we have two panels that focus on key areas that this party is passionate about: the union and the role of women in politics. The Conservative Party, as we all know, already has a strong tradition of advancing women in politics, but there is still more to do. The panel will discuss how we can encourage women's progress within the party, and I'm looking forward to hearing that discussion. But to begin our morning session, I'm delighted to welcome to the stage the Strengthening the Union panel with the Secretary of State for Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, and it's going to be hosted by our MSPs for South Scotland, Michelle Ballantyne.
Well, good morning and welcome to our panel discussion on how we as Conservatives can stand up for the future of the Union, the United Kingdom. Now, I know that everybody in this hall will agree with me when I say that the Conservative Party is the party of the Union. Indeed, our full name is the Conservative and Unionist Party. Our Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, recognises this and made himself the Minister for the Union to show his commitment to strengthening our United Kingdom. But that task has never been more urgent. In Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, nationalists are attempting to use uncertainty about Brexit to drive support for breaking up our country. It is a complex issue to address, and we need to show that our 300-year-old partnership is as relevant to people across Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland and England today as it has ever been. Now, I'm sure many of you will have ideas and questions, and they'll be popping up here as you send them through, and do vote on them because they're the ones that will be asked to our panel as we go forward. We do have some great speakers here today, and shortly we're going to hear from Julian and Alan and one of our fantastic parliamentary candidates, Susan, who's sitting down there. But firstly, I would like us all to welcome my friend and Scottish Conservative colleague, the Secretary of State for Scotland, Alistair Jack.
Thank you, Michelle. They say there's nothing quite like playing to a full hall, and I have to say this is indeed a full hall, and it's a great testament, I think, to the Conservative Party's support for the Union. So I'm delighted to have this opportunity to talk to you today about the action this government is taking to strengthen that union, an enduring partnership of over 300 years that binds our nations together. It allows us to achieve so much more together than we could apart. And I belong, as Michelle has said, to the Scottish Conservative and Unionist Party, and the clue is in the name. We will always fight for our union, fight to strengthen Scotland's place in the United Kingdom, and we will do that with absolutely everything we have got. Because we know that Nicola Sturgeon is once again demanding the right to hold another independence referendum. It does not matter to her that the 2014 result was decisive, or that she promised that it would settle the issue for a generation, or that the people of Scotland don't want more division and uncertainty and just want to move on. She is preparing to ask again because, ladies and gentlemen, it is her obsession. The SNP will never give up, and so we will never stop making the case for keeping our union, because only we can. We now know that the surrenderists in the Labour Party will sell out the union to get Jeremy Corbyn into number 10. Their message to the Scottish electorate is clear. If you vote Labour, you are voting for a second independence referendum. We also know that the Liberal Democrats don't have the strength to stand up to the SNP across Scotland. And we also know that the UK is Scotland's most important partnership. Our trade with the rest of the UK is worth more than 3 times as much as our trade with the rest of the EU. The union dividend is worth more than £2,000 for every man, woman and child in higher public spending in Scotland. But for me, the case for keeping our union goes deeper. Our 300-year-old ties of history, family and friendship. So I will never stop fighting for the United Kingdom. Now, part of keeping our union strong is to deliver Brexit. We must honour the result of the Brexit referendum so that we can take the opportunities and the advantages of life outside the EU. Recently, I visited the bustling fishing market of Peterhead and sat down with industry leaders. They relish the opportunities leaving the common fisheries policies will afford. I've also talked to farmers and to representatives of key sectors of the Scottish economy. And it is my commitment to them that this Scottish Conservative and Unionist government and our Scottish Conservatives will keep delivering for Scotland. And I'm going to keep shouting that from the rooftops and telling them about our achievements. And today, I will announce that £25 million is available for a new growth deal for Argyll and Bute. And that adds to the £1.4 billion that we've already invested in our City and Growth Deal programme in Scotland, transforming the local economies and creating high-skilled jobs. And we are going to complete the programme with deals for Falkirk and the islands, and they will be announced in the near future. We've also announced a £1.25 billion contract to build the Royal Navy's Type 31 frigates in Fife. And they couldn't go to the Clyde for that contract because it has no capacity left. And that is another success story for Scotland. We're bringing the international COP26 climate conference to Glasgow. We're introducing post-study work visas, which will bring the brightest and the best to Scotland's world-renowned universities. And as the Prime Minister announced, recently in Aberdeenshire, we're providing an extra 211 million for Scottish farmers, resolving a long-running dispute over CAP allocations. Ladies and gentlemen, that's an issue I raised as a newly elected backbencher, and now as Secretary of State for Scotland, I'm extremely proud to have seen it resolved by this Conservative government. Since Scotland elected a strong group of 13 MPs to Westminster in 2017, they have consistently delivered for Scotland. The last two budgets have frozen duty on spirits. That backs our biggest export of the whisky industry. We've also frozen duty on fuel, giving motorists, especially in rural areas, a helping hand. And we have saved, for the Scottish Police and Fire Services, £40 million every year by lifting the requirement to pay VAT. And that was clearing up a mess made by the SNP. We've also ended the unfairness of serving military personnel having to pay higher income tax, just simply for being stationed in Scotland. Nicola Sturgeon's High Tax Scotland. The Scottish Government's budget has also been increased by billions of pounds, money the SNP should be using to improve our public services. But instead, the SNP have made Scotland the highest tax part of the UK. And on education, supposedly Nicola Sturgeon's #1 priority, they have cut 3,100 teachers and allowed Scottish education, once viewed in the world to be the best, to be now judged internationally as just average. Under their management, a quarter of Scottish patients are waiting too long for treatments in our hospitals. We have had delays and extra costs to the new Sick Kids Hospital in Edinburgh, and that's just the latest of a number of scandals to have hit the Scottish NHS. So at a time when satisfaction with Scotland's schools, Scotland's healthcare and public transport has fallen to an all-time low, we must challenge them to do better. And our fantastic MSPs in Holyrood are doing just that. Recently, they forced the SNP government to finally abandon its intrusive named person scheme. But let's give some of the credit where it's due and I'd just like to take a moment to thank Ruth Davidson. Ruth has done so much to transform our party into a strong opposition to the SNP and their efforts to break up Britain, and we should all pay tribute to her. I also know that Jackson Carlaw, interim leader, will continue to follow the great work and continue holding the SNP to account. Ladies and gentlemen, our hard-working Conservative MPs and MSPs are a far cry from the noisy and ineffective nationalists. For them, Holyrood is a vehicle for a drive for their separation, and Westminster is about stunts and grievances. However, we are there in Westminster and in Holyrood to get things done, as I've detailed to you, and we have got things done, many things done. We have a proud record of delivery that we can build on. We have a Prime Minister who's totally committed to the Union. And so in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, I can reassure you that Scotland, at the heart of the United Kingdom, has a very bright future. Thank you.
Q&A. Well, thank you, Alistair. And there was certainly some great news there for Scotland, and I'm sure my colleagues will be welcoming that warmly. So we're going to move to the first Q&A now, and the most popular question so far is, in his role as Minister for the Union, what should the Prime Minister's #1 priority be? I think that can probably go to all of you.
Well, thanks, Michelle. I think that's a great question, and I think it underlines what Alistair has touched on, and what I'll mention, and I'm sure it'll be something that Julian will want to consider as well, is that when we get Brexit done, this will be a time that we can bind the Union so close together, because we can access new markets, wherever they are around the world, and that's where the Union comes into itself to highlight to businesses in Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales and in England that they can only access, be that in North America, be that in the Far East or wherever it is, because of the strength and the might of the Union. So the Prime Minister, being the Minister for the Union, will ensure that every part of the UK benefits from those trade deals wherever they are right around the world.
Thank you, Alan. Do you want to add anything to that?
I think, Susan, we've seen the Prime Minister fully committed to the Union, even in the last few months since he became Prime Minister. He's been across the Northern Ireland, he's made a big impact, and I think we want him around each of the countries we represent as often as possible.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. He's already been twice to Scotland. He wants to keep coming, and he's had a huge impact. And it's also, he wants to level up the spending across the United Kingdom and create. It's not just all about the southeast. It's about not, and it's not just about Northern Ireland, Scotland, and Wales. He also wants to see the northeast of England, the northwest. The Union is about the four nations, not just the three sitting here.
Absolutely. Right. So, Alan, you touched on it. The next question is, what are the most exciting prospects for the devolved nations after Brexit?
Well, I think it's access to new markets, because this is where the Union will come together. So Welsh lamb is probably the best lamb in the world, but none of that is exported to the United States.
Of course.
But none of that is exported to the United States, for example. But it's the influence that the UK can have in accessing the US market in a range of products, be it agriculture and so many other opportunities, so that if you're a farmer in Brecon or somewhere like that, then all of a sudden you can see where the Union is standing up for you, accessing new markets. So from the smallest of hamlets or community in mid-Wales, then that is where the Union is really opening the door for you to compete on the world stage.
Thank you. Right, we're going to move on now, and our next speaker probably has one of the most difficult jobs in the Cabinet, trying to get the DUP and Sinn Féin to agree to go back into government. So, making sure that Northern Ireland's business and its people are prepared for Brexit, whether we leave or with or without a deal. The challenges are many, but so are the opportunities. Just yesterday, we learned that the historic shipyard that built the Titanic, Harland and Wolff, has been saved. Yay! And not only has it been saved, the new buyers plan on increasing the workforce, so excellent news. So for the important job that he does in representing the interests of the most complex and unique nation of our United Kingdom, can we please give a warm welcome to the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, Julian Smith.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan, and conference. It's a privilege and an honour to be here as Northern Ireland Secretary today. It's also a massive relief to be no longer the government's chief whip. Northern Ireland is a unique part of the United Kingdom with an important and difficult history that all of us are familiar with. Since being appointed Secretary of State 70 days ago, I've been travelling to all corners of Northern Ireland, meeting hundreds of people. And when talking to entrepreneurs, hospital staff, youth groups and volunteers, I've been struck by people's attitude, by their huge ambition and their commitment despite the absence of political decision-making from Stormont. Whether at Musgrave Park Hospital or Ashfield Boys School in Belfast, or at Derry City and Strabane District Council, people have not only been challenging, engaged and fair to me as their new Secretary of State, but there's a real entrepreneurial spirit and a desire for Northern Ireland to grow and to prosper. Just a few weeks ago, I saw this firsthand at an event organised by a new trade group. This trade group was formed a year ago by 3 business people: Glyn Roberts, who I think is in the hall today, Stephen Kelly and Colin Neal. It brought 350 business people from Northern Ireland to Westminster. It was Northern Ireland's largest ever business delegation to represent the region's growing and self-confident business community, to convey a clear message: Northern Ireland is open for business. As Susan has said, this message was heard very loudly yesterday when the energy company Infrastrata announced its acquisition of the iconic Belfast shipyard, Harland and Wolff. Throughout the summer, I've been working with the trades unions, Gavin Robinson, the local MP, the administrators and the workforce to save the yard from closure. Shipbuilding will now continue and thrive in Belfast thanks to a Conservative government. And this Conservative government is supporting the ambition of all people and all businesses across Northern Ireland by investing in the nation's growing economy through the biggest day-to-day funding settlement for Northern Ireland in a decade that the Chancellor announced in the spending review. This morning I announced that people and businesses of mid-south west Northern Ireland and Causeway Coast and Glens will benefit from 163 million of UK government funding. Economic growth, job creation and investment in local projects. This means that every part of Northern Ireland now benefits from a growth deal funding as a result of this government's investment. Under this Conservative government, Northern Ireland's economy is growing, ambition is being encouraged and the entrepreneurial spirit is thriving. We've seen unemployment fall to a record low of 2.8% and employment in Northern Ireland is at a record high. And for this prosperity to continue, we must get Brexit done. I'm clear that the people of Northern Ireland, just like this government and this Prime Minister, want a deal. And I'll be doing everything I can in my role as Northern Ireland Secretary to help the Prime Minister secure a deal, to protect the Northern Ireland economy, to protect the Good Friday Agreement, and through that, to protect the hard-won peace process that was won by three decades ago by many, many dedicated politicians across Northern Ireland and in the UK. And in the context of Brexit, the challenge of restoring Stormont has become even more important. There has been no devolved government for over 1,000 days. Political decisions impacting citizens' lives left unmade. Vital actions relating to health and social services, education, agriculture not taken. We must now do all we can to invoke the spirit and trust of those who built the peace process and to listen to the hopes of the incredible young people that I've been meeting over the summer to ensure that we make the case for restoring Stormont. They will benefit from new jobs created in Northern Ireland as a result of this government's commitment to attracting investment, from the increased university funding committed to the new growth deals that I've just mentioned. But if Stormont was up and running, even more could be achieved. Apprenticeship and skills academies across the region, encouraging wealth creation and new jobs for school leavers and graduates, delivering on health and social services. The government stands ready to support all Northern Ireland political leaders in all of these aims, because above all, it is vital for those young people that I've been meeting that we deliver a prosperous future for the whole of Northern Ireland. A future delivered through the Union and by getting a good economy and security protecting Brexit deal and getting Stormont back up and running. And I'll be spending the coming days and weeks working with our Prime Minister to make both of these things happen.
Thank you, Julian, and some good news for Northern Ireland there. Now, we've got another few Q&As, and the most popular one at the moment is the requirement for a holiday. Will the government create a Union Day bank holiday to celebrate its family of nations? They all want another day off.
Are we replacing it with another bank holiday by any chance?
What's the thoughts?
Yes, we could get rid of one of the left-wing ones. Bring in a Union Day.
Hands up, ladies and gentlemen. Do you want a Union Day holiday?
It's popular.
I think that's your answer then. Okay. So, on that note, how can we further improve cooperation between the UK government and devolved nations? I might start with Alistair for that one and then come to Alan.
So the Prime Minister's created the Unit for the Union, which is, and there's the Dunlop review on how Whitehall, across Whitehall departments view the Union and announcements and getting the coordination of that right and not cutting across. It's important we respect the devolved settlement. And by respecting it but strengthening it through financial support, and getting more more government, hopefully conservative, government ministers on the ground in the various parts of the United Kingdom, that's very important. I think, possibly if I talk about Scotland for a moment, over 12 years of an SNP government, I feel that we have retreated, Westminster's retreated from Scotland too much, and we need to get more UK government ministers from BEIS and DCMS and all the other departments out there championing the cause, getting the message across, and showing the people of Scotland that we are truly one United Kingdom, and we are strong because the sum of our parts is not as great as our whole. Our whole is something quite impressive. Yeah. And we'll get that message across, and we will get more money invested into those nations.
Excellent. And maybe by having a Scottish Conservative government in Scotland.
We'd like that. Yeah.
Alan, do you want to add something to that?
I think, as Alistair said, respecting the devolution settlement is the starting point. But that doesn't mean that the UK government shouldn't be active in every part of the UK, be in every part of England as well as in the nations. And I think that the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, for example, gives us the opportunity to deliver UK strategic projects in every part of the country, rather than there's been an attitude maybe over recent decades where we've devolved, where Whitehall has devolved and forgotten about the prospect, or handed over the problem and not engaged in terms of it actively. Certainly over the last 9 years or so, there's been a will across Whitehall to engage actively, constructively. We've devolved further, but that doesn't mean that we don't also have a responsibility to deliver some of those projects too.
Exactly. Julian, you've got some challenges in Northern Ireland. How do you think we can strengthen it?
Well, I talked earlier about young people, and we all know about the Erasmus scheme that many students have benefited from to travel to European universities. But I want to see much more travel and cooperation between the nations for young people, and maybe we can look at replicating that sort of scheme to get young people from across the devolved nations experiencing each other's cultures.
Thank you. Absolutely. Now, I'll do one that's suddenly raced up, and I think it connects with what we've just talked about, and an interesting one because perhaps we are missing one figure on the stage. Do you think it's time to look at increasing devolution in England as well?
As a Yorkshire MP, I think that devolution has been really positive. We've seen, Manchester, we've seen London, we've seen very, very good examples. It's obviously, as I said earlier, not they're working at the moment in Northern Ireland, but if the right structures can be found, I think the track record of the Conservative government over the last few years on devolution has been really, really positive.
Yeah, the advent of mayors has really made a difference, I think, hasn't it?
And I think it's got to be demanded by the communities, and there doesn't need to be a uniform structure either. The sort of devolution in one part of the country will be different to the needs and demands of a sort of devolution in another part of the country. And I think we've got to be reflective, and providing it's demanded locally, then clearly the government should be a facilitator.
Okay. Well, that leads us very nicely into our next speaker. Because Susan Webber is a councillor in Edinburgh, and I'm sure she would like more devolution locally as well. So can you please welcome Susan Webber to the stage to have a...
Good morning, conference, and thank you, Michelle. It's been just over 5 years since I had my political awakening. In 2014, I rolled my sleeves up and got stuck in. I got stuck in to preserve and protect the United Kingdom and to save Scotland from the threat of independence. We all know the phrase that time passes more quickly as we get older, and crikey, certainly elections just seem to fly by. But yet, according to nationalists who promised us that it was a once-in-a-generation referendum, these last 5 years have felt like a lifetime. Their obsession with independence continues. In a recent poll on the 5th anniversary of the 2014 referendum, it stated that almost 60% of Scots now want to remain part of the UK, with barely 25% backing the First Minister's timetable for independence. So you really would think that the nationalists elected across all levels of government would be rolling their sleeves up and knuckling down to deliver basic services, to grow our economy, improve our education system, and support our NHS. But one after one, sector after sector, standards have dropped to the bottom of the table of results. Though the nationalists have an answer for that, they just pull out of the rating systems altogether. And most recently, despite the promises from the SNP Cabinet Secretary that the children's ward at my local hospital would fully open again this month, it will not. And this may be small fry given to our £150 million National Children's Hospital in my city that has been delayed by yet another year, at a cost to the local health board of £1.4 million a month. Breaking promises comes far too easily for them. And now my very own Member of Parliament has seized upon what she sees as the Brexit opportunity. She is trailblazing a path for her own leadership challenge, stoking the flames of division and inflating her very own girly SWAT ego. So I think you know who that is. Joanna Cherry, QC MP for Edinburgh South West, is conveniently ignoring the devastating impact independence would have on her very own electorate, one with a vast UK defence presence, one with an economy heavily reliant on the financial sector. And all of this is under threat by their independence agenda and associated uncertainty that the nationalists continue to peddle. It is imperative, conference, that each and every one of us in the UK and every single one of us in this room leave today, roll up our collective sleeves and get stuck in to strengthen our union. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Susan, and I think she summed it up very well. It is all down to all of us to actually strengthen our union. It's not just the responsibility of politicians, it's the responsibility of everybody who cares. So, another 4 minutes of Q&A, and the first one I've got is the Port of Dover is a big focus for Brexit. What does the panel feel about how the ports in Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales will deal with Brexit after the 31st of October?
Well, if I start, the second busiest port in the UK during the summer months is that of Holyhead. So that's between Dublin and Holyhead. It's extremely important to the UK economy, to the North Wales economy, but it's also important to the Republic of Ireland. So we've put a lot of planning and a lot of actions in place to ensure the free flow of transport in the event of a no deal. But also, I think we can turn this around, that after we've left the European Union, when we've got Brexit done, Holyhead or North Wales then effectively will also be the gateway to Europe. And that's the opportunity for North Wales, as well as the northwest of England and that corridor, to be part of the activity in the northern part of the UK compared to just the focus that's always been in between Dover and Calais in the past.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would agree. I think Cairn Ryan in my constituency, we have plans for more business coming through there, and business from Southern Ireland coming up through Northern Ireland and through Cairn Ryan would make sense after Brexit. I don't subscribe to this theory that that very much different is going to happen. I think the ports will all continue to flow much as they do now, to be honest. The idea that suddenly we're not going to get medicines in or all these other ridiculous scaremongering stories, I can't see why. Hauliers have to finance their trucks and pay for them. That means the wheels have to keep turning. Ferry companies have to finance their ferries. The ferries keep flowing. The ports employ people. They need the income from traffic going through the ports. This idea everything's going to seize up and there's going to be a disaster, especially in the event of a no-deal Brexit, I think is absolute nonsense. Business will find a way through.
Absolutely. And Julian, presumably you'd echo what your colleagues have said, because Ireland needs it.
I think we've seen with Holland and Wolf that actually we're getting investors into our ports, into places like Belfast, even before Brexit takes place. And if we can get a good deal, I think that will increase and that investment will continue.
Excellent. So, very quickly, how are we going to protect our seas and fishing industry post-Brexit? Just an easy question, just to...
Well, we have a thing called the Royal Navy.
Hey, there they are.
And obviously our sea fisheries are a hugely valuable asset to Britain, and coming out of the common fisheries policy is a great advantage to us. It will allow us to regenerate our coastal communities right across the United Kingdom, not just in Scotland, but all around the United Kingdom. And we will still allow access to our fishing, and we will need access. I mean, the cod wars, cod go north when the waters are warmer, and they come south when they're colder, and we need to do deals with our neighbours on these things. So I'm absolutely confident that we can use this great asset we have. And I'm also absolutely sure that after we leave the European Union, the Scots will be in no mind to leave the United Kingdom and give those assets back to the European Union.
Absolutely. So we strengthen the union in the process. Absolutely. Now, I'm going to come to Alan now, and we all know that there is a Labour government in waiting. You can laugh at that point. But we know that the dangers of Jeremy Corbyn are very, very real. And our final speaker today is no stranger to standing up to Welsh Labour and is a fierce champion for Wales, both here and in the UK and on the international stage, as you will ever find. Indeed, he has been recognised as such, and he holds the very honourable title of being the only member of the cabinet who's been asked by 3 consecutive prime ministers to continue in the same job. So please give a very warm welcome to the Secretary of State for Wales, Alan Cairns.
Wel, diolch yn fawr iawn, Michelle. Mae hwn yn ddadl ofnadwy o bwysig, nid yn unig I ni fel gwlad, mae'n achlysur ofnadwy o bwysig I danlinellu cyfansoddiad y Ddeyrnas Unedig a llwyddiant ein gwlad Cymru a'r Ddeyrnas Gyfunol. So I suspect you absolutely agree with everything I've said. Well, what I did say was Wales is the greatest nation in the UK, so I'm glad that you agree. Now, it's a privilege to share a platform with Michelle and my good friends and cabinet colleagues, Julian Smith and Alistair Jack. Now, although we work closely together and agree on almost everything, don't accept a single thing that they say about rugby. They know absolutely nothing. Now, take my word for it, it's a racing cert that it will be Alan Wynne-Jones who will be lifting the Rugby World Cup in just a few weeks' time. But we will all absolutely agree that as we leave the European Union, our union, the Union of the United Kingdom, will become more important and relevant than ever before. Our union is the most successful union of nations in human history. It's not forced, it's practical, it's pragmatic, it comes together through natural bonds, a family of nations with a common culture and shared identity. The way we identify ourselves, how we feel as people and how we express our loyalties can be complex, but nationality doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. I am proudly British, but I'm also proud to be Welsh. It's a union where each nation and region contributes to the success of the other. where each community can excel in, be it manufacturing, technology, services, or agriculture, all contributing to the greatness of our nation. Now, Wales has great strengths. In aerospace, half of the world's passenger aircraft have wings that were built in Broughton. The F-35 fighter jet global repair hub is in Sealand in Flintshire. The world's largest compound semiconductor cluster is in South Wales, where much of the technology in your smartphone was developed. We're part of the cybersecurity golden triangle and also have the best new nuclear offer anywhere in Europe. Cardiff University is the world's leading centre in precision medicine. And I could highlight so many more areas in fintech, tourism, food production, because as we all agreed a little earlier, rural Wales rears the best lamb in the world too. And it's the strength of our union that allows us to invest and to support these sectors. A new fair funding settlement for Wales with additional investment in growth deals across every part. The UK's largest city deal is in Cardiff, and today I announced a £55 million down payment for the Mid Wales growth deal. The semiconductor sector, an active homes project, and the precision medicines that I've suggested are all supported by UKRI. The MOD played a pivotal role in attracting the US Air Force's interest to Sealand, and the National Science
Morning. Hi. Yes, cool. Yeah. Thank you so much. Nice to see you. Enjoy. Thank you.
All right, how are you? It's so nice seeing you. You well? Very well, thanks. Good, nice to see you. Oh, hi, nice to see you.
How are you? Nice to see you.
Good to see you. Well, I wasn't going to get up to
Yeah, I've been to studio.
so if we can get such a step to watch it on telly, somewhere on film. It's fairly cheap. Oh, is it? Oh, fantastic.
Chris.
Yes.
Eau de Souma. Like Chanel. Probably costs a weekly salary as well. You know that one? You should ask her, love. You've been swimming this morning, love. It's a very nice pool, apparently. Never been in. Apparently there is.
ignoring the will of the people and attempting to undermine our unity as a nation won't distract the public from your failings on the Welsh NHS and the education system. After 20 years of Welsh Labour, we've seen money wasted and squandered and an obsession with restructuring and centralising powers away from doctors and nurses and teachers. Now is not the time to look inward. We need to think big, act decisively, and grasp the great opportunities before us as we leave the European Union. Now, as Michelle mentioned, this is my 4th conference speech as the Secretary of State for Wales. A job which, as the son of a welder at the Port Talbot Steelworks, growing up in the Swansea Valley, I could never have dreamed that I would be doing. I have the privilege of travelling the length and breadth of my home nation, of talking to some truly inspiring people, visiting some of the most innovative, ambitious and exciting businesses and communities. I also have the opportunity to talk to international investors, to global traders who are looking at the UK in a new and exciting way. It is in this knowledge of the country that I love and of the appreciation of the opportunities before us that gives me great hope and confidence of our next chapter. Confidence we come together as people of different backgrounds, different communities and different nations. But as Conservatives, we want the same thing: to get Brexit done, to move on to deliver the people's priorities, a united nation, a fairer society and a global Britain. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, it only remains for me to thank again all our speakers and Susan over there, and to all of you for sending in your questions and voting on them, and to bid you goodbye and go out there and protect our union and vote Conservative. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you.
I saw her face. Now I'm a believer. Not a trace of doubt in my mind.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your chair, Dr. Caroline Johnson, and her panel.
Welcome to our Women in Politics panel. My name is Dr. Caroline Johnson. I'm the Conservative Member of Parliament for Sleaford and North Hykeham in Lincolnshire. I've been an MP since 2016 in a by-election, and prior to that, I worked as a children's doctor in Peterborough Hospital. The panel today looks slightly different from that on your booklet. That is because today the government is passing very important legislation, the Domestic Abuse Bill, in Parliament. But we have a great panel, and I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves now. Miriam.
I'm Miriam Cates. I'm the parliamentary candidate for Penistone and Stocksbridge. That's just down the road, North Sheffield. I grew up in Sheffield, went to my local school, always interested in politics. I think I was probably a bit of a geek. I kind of stayed up late listening to the Westminster Hour. Not very cool. But I never really thought about party politics. It was more just an interest. I went off to university, did science, came back to Sheffield, trained as a science teacher, taught in a local school for a while. And then we moved out to a village north of Sheffield to raise our kids. And I just got really stuck into community life. I chaired the PTA for a bit, helped with the park, got involved in some local campaigns. And a friend encouraged me to stand for parish council, which I did. I really enjoyed it. And I think I saw the opportunity for someone who loves their community, wants good things for the community to bring change. So I thought the next step was maybe I'd like to stand for city council. And living in Sheffield, I kind of thought, well, I'm going to have to join the Labour Party to get elected, but I just couldn't stomach that. And then just out of the blue, a family friend gave me the opportunity to stand for the Conservatives in a local ward in Sheffield, not a particularly winnable seat for us. But I thought, yeah, this is a great opportunity. I went for it, really enjoyed campaigning. I tripled the Conservative vote, still came fourth, but it's a good stat. So I thought next time I'd like to win. So I got selected for a more winnable ward. And then my husband encouraged me to come to conference last year. Didn't know anybody, but I got involved in some of the Women to Win events, and Anne Jenkin and Virginia Crosby kind of picked me up and said, you need to get on the list. And I was very fortunate because my kind of home seat of Penistone and Stocksbridge was coming up for selection. And so to cut a long story short, I became the parliamentary candidate.
Thank you. Gillian.
I'm Gillian Keegan. I'm the Member of Parliament for Chichester. And I grew up about 25 miles from here. Somebody's from Chichester here. In a place called Knowsley. Anyone going to go? Whoop, no. So I went to the local comprehensive school. I left school at 16. Everybody did. I started an apprenticeship in a car factory. And Knowsley has a 42,214 majority, so I didn't actually meet a Conservative in Knowsley at all, let alone voting or understanding how I was going to get to the Conservative Party. I grew up in a Labour family. My granddad's a miner, my dad builds motorways, my mum's a secretary, my nan worked in a biscuit factory, everybody grew up in council houses. But I was starting work, I was in a car factory, and it was a heavily unionised car factory. And I was studying at the same time. They studied me all the way, they sponsored me all the way up to degree level, and I was studying all about globalization and business. I was thinking, these do not make any sense. And then I had the perfect example of what a Labour government would look like, which is Derek Hatton's militant leadership of Liverpool City Council. And there it was, all in front of my eyes. So I wasn't going to vote Labour, and at age 19, I voted Conservative for the first time. And I've voted Conservative ever since. Now, it's fair to say that the Knowsley polling booths are not full of Conservative voters still, but I went on, I lived and worked all over the world. I worked for about 30 years, and 5 years ago, my life changed. Now, like all good stories, it started in a bar. I met Baroness Anne Jenkin in the theatre at the interval, and she was with someone I knew from the Japanese business world, very random. And she said to me, have you ever thought of being a Conservative MP, which is a completely random thing to say to somebody in the theatre. But that's what they do. And there's a campaign called Ask Her to Stand. And everybody, if you see somebody anywhere that you think might be a Conservative MP, ask them to stand, because 5 years later, they may be a Conservative MP. Women to Win, the CWO, they all helped me on my journey. And I also want to thank Teresa Hurst, who was the agent for St Helens, where I stood in 2015, and all of you like Teresa that helped candidates, pretty much rookie candidates, through this journey. Thank you so much. It means such a lot, and it really is helpful. The snap election 2017 and the seat of Chichester came up. Chichester have been sending a member of Parliament, or a member to Parliament, since 1295. If you go on Wikipedia, there are 180 MPs that are listed, and they're all men. So for 722 years, they've been sending men to some kind of parliament or other. And there is me, right at the bottom, from a Knowsley Comprehensive School that I left age 16 for the Member of Parliament for Chichester at the very end of that list, the 181st one in Wikipedia. And that is the party that I joined, that I have been a member of, and that I have voted for since I was 19. The party of aspiration, the party of social mobility, and the party of meritocracy. Thank you.
Thank you, Gillian. That's an inspiring story. Siobhan.
My name's Siobhan Bailey. I am the prospective parliamentary candidate for Stroud in Gloucestershire. Got some whoops. I am the luckiest candidate in the UK. Stroud is a beautiful area. It is rural and industrial. It's got amazing innovation companies and cultureful. I mean, I am actually, it's a bit of a pitch to try and get you all out to help me win that seat, because I'm against a Labour gentleman who has been trying to win the seat since 1992 and winning and losing the seat for about the last 20 years. So we've never had a female MP there, and I want to be the first one. But so I'm not from a political family. I didn't really get involved in politics until about 5 years ago myself. It started by being canvassed by a fabulous woman who is now one of my best friends. And because I am somebody who makes eye contact with people and ends up on a committee, I very quickly had a big box of leaflets to try and deliver before the end of the week. And then I was asked by somebody who's also a friend 3 times, a gentleman councillor in the place I was living, 3 times he asked me to be a councillor, and I made excuse after excuse. I was too busy, my work, I'm a lawyer, didn't fit around, but he persevered, and I'm so glad he did, because fast forward to 2017, I stood for the London seat of Bermondsey in Old Southwark. I became a reliable 4th, but I did increase my vote share. Reliable 3rd, sorry, I'm misspeaking. But I did increase my vote share, and I really enjoyed it. And then I stalked Stroud. It was the only place I wanted to stand. It was the only seat I applied for, and I'm genuinely chuffed to bits. I'm already running campaigns for further education, for high streets, for our accessibility for our train station. No day is ever the same, and if Bercow has his way, no hour is ever the same in politics. And I can highly recommend getting involved. So like Gillian, I get involved with the Ask Her to Stand campaign. I'm an ambassador for the 50-50 Parliament, and I am saying to all women in the audience here and also watching, this is your first hashtag Ask Her to Stand moment. I'm asking you now, and I hope you get involved.
Thank you so much, Siobhan. Ladies and gentlemen, last week I was honoured to be asked by our chairman to be the party's vice chairman for women. And I'm really looking forward to getting stuck in, to getting more women involved at every part of politics and every part of our party, and ensuring we have a manifesto with great policies to attract women voters. We have some questions today. These questions are coming to my iPad from the floor. And so the first question is a really important one, because it's going to really help me in that job. So the question is, how can we attract more women, younger women, into the party? Miriam.
Well, I think politics in general doesn't have a great reputation at the moment. I think it's seen as kind of combative and aggressive. And as women, sometimes we prefer to be collaborative, work together and be less like that. But I think we just need to get the numbers up. We have more numbers, more people will want to join. No, as women, I don't like being the only woman in a room. And I think other women probably feel the same way. So we need that kind of critical mass. And I think once we've got that, then it will be easy to attract other women. But I think perhaps the question is, if they're not coming to us, we need to go to them. So I was at a great event a couple of evenings ago, the launch of the Women's Entrepreneurs Network, which was brilliant. And the approach there is to look for women who are entrepreneurs, talk to them about politics and why Conservative government is so important for entrepreneurs, and then get them attracted that way. So perhaps we need to go to where young women are, sell the benefits and the importance of being involved in politics, and ask them into the party from there.
Thank you. And Julian, you said in your speech that you were attracted to the Conservative Party at 19 as a young woman. What was it attracted you then, and how do you think we could use that to attract more young women now?
The Conservative Party makes sense. It's the oldest and most respected party in the world for a reason. And that's because it's at the heart of its economic policy. It makes sense, and it makes sense to pretty much everybody in the country. I always used to think, if you took the badge Conservative away and took the badge Labour away and did a blind tasting in anywhere, actually, a supermarket, everybody would choose the Conservative Party values, everybody would choose the Conservative Party and its policies. But the brand is what we need to... And why did I? Because I looked beyond the tribal politics. I looked beyond, you know, what everybody else had done, what my parents had done, what my grandparents had done, what everybody before them had done. And sometimes, actually, in the past, in my, you know, maybe my great-grandparents, it was probably right, actually, for them to vote Labour, perhaps at the time, because we're obviously a very working class, and they would have probably needed to have more rights. But the Conservative Party today, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you want, if you want to get on in life, it is the right party. If you want to solve any of the problems about public services, the thing about the Labour Party is they sit there and they admire the problem. They almost wallow in it. They do not set out to solve it. I go into universities a lot. Politics is a contact sport. The reason I'm keen to get more women, people like Miriam and Siobhan, with me and you in the green benches is because, you know, we can connect with people. I can connect if I go to a university. People will listen to me. If I go and talk to apprentices, I did an event with degree apprentices last night, they'll listen to me because I am a degree apprentice. I'm the only degree apprentice in the House of Commons, you know, so I've got some connection with them. And it's those connection points that people want to see. And once they get them and they listen to us, as opposed to listen to somebody else describe us, then they'll vote Conservative.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Julian. I think it's really insightful. We talked about the CWO a little bit earlier on, and the CWO has a young women's group now, headed by Ellie Robertson. What do you think we could do to support Ellie in getting more younger women involved?
Well, I think it's sort of part and parcel of all of our jobs in this room and for the membership across the country. You know, if you can have a branch of young women involved in your actual local area, that's great. But if you don't think that there's a critical mass of people, then reach out to a county or a wider area. And the technology is there to have Skype chats and have meetups across. So I think as a starting point, aim for having those groups. But I think Ellie actually spoke on a panel the other day that I was listening to, and she was talking about the litmus test issues that make young people interested in politics, and particularly for young women. We're thinking about, you know, housing, think about the activist and the campaigning that's been done on FGM or the upskirting bill that we passed. You know, those sorts of things that get people involved, that make people realise that politics isn't a dry, boring issue. It isn't just people in suits. It is actually things that people can affect, that can affect everyday lives. And I think social justice issues, environmental issues, those things are really capturing young people's attention. So I think if the branches can look at that while holding the groups themselves, it would be very helpful.
Thank you very much, Siobhan. And I think it's worth noting, ladies and gentlemen, that as you look around you, as you've attended conference this week, you may have noticed there are a lot of young people here. Ladies and gentlemen, there are more young people at this Conservative conference than there have been ever before. So we're going to go on for another one of your questions, another question from the audience. So the next most popular question, perhaps a slightly difficult one, is social media a major blocker from encouraging women to stand in Parliament?
Are you asking me?
Well, we'll start with Gillian this time. Gillian, you're an MP. You've gone through this process.
Yeah, I remember when I first got my first social media account, and I was a parliamentary candidate in St Helens, South and Wiston. So I wasn't really expecting to win this seat, but I was hoping to get second for the Conservatives for the first time. It wasn't my home seat, but lots of my cousins lived there. So I set up this account. And I put some picture. I think I'd gone to a college and spoken to some people there, some of the students. And I put a picture up. And then I got on the next day. And usually when you get on Facebook, you've got this sort of, 9 notifications. I had hundreds and more notifications. I thought, oh, they obviously love me, very popular. And then I went on, and it was a ton of abuse from people who've never met me. And it shocked me, actually. And then that night, I couldn't actually sleep very well, but I did get over it the next day. And I found one compliment from somebody who'd put about 5 really nasty things. And right at the end, he said, my girlfriend says you've got nice hair. And I thought, well, that's it. I'll take that as a compliment. It is dreadful. I try to use them now more strategically. So Twitter's the worst, but it's got political activists on. If I'm on Twitter, I do everything that will drive my opponents mad. Every nice thing I do, every compliment I get, I retweet, mundane things as well. So I'm not too overtly political, because then you end up with fights that people have got hashtags. Instagram's lovely. Lovely pictures. You've got filters. Takes 20 years off you. Perfect. It couldn't have come soon enough. And then you've got Facebook, which is actually how you get in touch with your community. And Facebook, the community do look at what you say. They do, on the whole, they will respond very well. The thing that makes me laugh most now is when I get negative comments. My mates who still live in Huyton, in Knowsley, all rush in to my defense. So they basically say, when they call me posh, privileged, stuck up, someone who doesn't know their life, or whatever other abuse they hurl at you, they all pile in and say, no, that's not her. She left school at 16. She's one of us, She's worked hard and she's got where she's got in life. So actually, other people start to defend you when people are very unfair. So it goes with the job. I've only had a couple of really nasty things, but I think some colleagues get terrible abuse and do get death threats. And I did have somebody go into a police station in Chichester, actually, and ask for me to be arrested for being a traitor, for voting for the withdrawal agreement. But, you do end up with... Brexit has actually created a very toxic climate, and that's another reason why we need to get Brexit done.
I think we can certainly agree that we definitely need to get Brexit done, and it's certainly the messaging in the party and conference today certainly would corroborate that too. Siobhan, what's been your experience of social media? Have you been able to use it to your advantage as well?
I think Twitter is an absolutely toxic hellhole, actually, but I do use it. I think it is a time and energy drain, and I do use it, but I don't respond to people. And there's loads of people that some of you, so I'd love to respond. That people give me really positive feedback. I'd love to respond, but I can't respond to you and then not respond to the really difficult people. And actually, so I've decided just to take a stance of what my opponents call Tory on broadcast only, but they can naff off. And the best advice I have ever had, the best advice I've ever had is just don't read the comments, and I'm not perfect at that. There's some days you want to self-flagellate and you just sit and you go through them, and it is problematic. But yeah, Twitter for political and national staff, expect to get the hassle. Facebook for local, and I find that really engaging, and if I get time, I really enjoy talking to local residents, and Instagram for cats, which is just a joy. So please follow my Instagram if you want cheering up. So.
Thank you, Siobhan. Miriam, do you have any comments about social media?
I mean, the short answer to the question, does social media put women off going to politics? I think it's probably yes, because I think unlike in other professions or jobs, you are being very exposed, your family life's being very exposed. I've got 3 kids, I dread the day that their photos end up out there. And it is a scary thought. Bizarrely, the first thing that went through my head when I was selected was, I've got 5 books outstanding at Stocksbridge Library. If that gets on Facebook, I'm never going to get elected. And, it's utterly ridiculous, but you just think every detail of your life could be exposed. But I think, on the other hand, we are the first generation who are going to be, as politicians, who are going to be affected by this. And so we've got a duty to kind of break ground for the next generation. And I think what Gillian said is really important about getting supporters to wade in. I think nice, normal, sensible people probably normally just duck out when it starts to get horrible. But actually, if nice, normal, sensible people waded in at that point, it would soon become socially unacceptable to make these kind of comments. And we've seen transformation in society, things like drink driving, sexist shouts by builders, those kind of things, where they have become socially unacceptable by us as a whole society coming together and calling these things out. And I think if nice, normal people call these things out, then eventually culture will change. And then the next generation of young women coming up will not face this same nightmare that is being seen at the moment.
Thank you, Miriam. So going back to our questions from the floor, the most popular question at the moment relates to men. And it says, how can we encourage the men in our party to support the women in politics? And I think before asking any of the panel, I think it's worth mentioning that when Margaret Thatcher was elected as our party leader, there were only 7 women in the House of Commons. She was elected predominantly by men. And when Theresa May was elected as the leader of our party, she was elected predominantly by men. So I know that men in this party and in this room have given great support to women. But what do you think we can do to get them to do more to support women? Simone.
Knock about with us a bit more, I think. Because I have an incredible support network of male Gloucestershire MPs. I'm the only Labour blob in the middle of some brilliant Conservative MPs in Gloucestershire. So they're all brilliant. If I pick the phone up, they will help me. And on my way up here, you know, in terms of going through selection, I've always had an awful lot of support. So I think actually men are doing an awful lot, and we probably don't get enough credit vocally because we're constantly talking about what else we can do as a party. So I think that is really important. And I also feel that you know, we need to make sure that good people get on in the party. You know, we need more women, we need more
Boris, can we have a picture?
You know what I'd like to be in life? A Conservative Member of Parliament. That's going to make me so much more popular. I'll be able to go on the streets. Everyone's going to love me wherever I go. You know, it's not a normal thing, actually. And we need more people to actually be encouraged from all different walks of life to do it. And then when they get here, we really need to help. Particularly people, there are some people who've dreamed of being the Prime Minister or an MP from a very early age. Or World King, indeed. Why stop there? Why stop there? But there are people who've done that. But there also are people who haven't, and they need help navigating the way. And obviously, there's more men in the party. There's more male MPs. But, you know, obviously, we've started with a bunch of fantastic male MPs who do everything they can to encourage us. Well, not to outshine them, actually, I guess.
That's right, and it's worth mentioning that both our Prime Minister Boris Johnson and our Chairman James Cleverly have made it clear that they're committed to ensuring that our candidates list moves towards containing both 50% of men and 50% of women. And also worth noting that this week we have selected 15 parliamentary candidates for seats up and down the country, and 8 of those selected on merit, not on quota, not on one woman shortlist. 8 of those selected on merit this week have been women. So, Miriam, just go back to the question on the iPad, which was coming in. What more do you think men could do to help you and others like you?
Well, I think encouragement's the key word, as Gillian said, and you know, every step of my political journey, I have been encouraged by both men and women, persuaded, you know, encouraged that I've got the skill to do it, that I am confident enough, those kind of things. But one more thing I would add is, as a mother with caring responsibilities, I think the way that the party does things sometimes isn't creative enough to fit around a mother's life. And that's no criticism of anybody involved. I've found everybody to be as accommodating as they can. But I think if you think about, you know, my life, I campaign during the day, I pick up my kids from school, and then until about 7:30, hopefully, they're in bed, I can't answer the phone, I can't respond to an immediate email, I can't do an interview, because that's their time and they need me and they need my full attention. and then, you know, I don't see them all week, and then I'm out all day campaigning on the Saturday. Is that, you know, what are the kind of creative ways that we could change the way that mothers, particularly with young children, can get involved without sacrificing their families? Because I don't see having children as a problem. I see it as a real blessing, an advantage. You know, I love them and I don't want them to feel that they are being sacrificed to go through this process. But I think we have to be a bit creative to allow women with young children to be able to campaign, to be selected, to be encouraged up the ladder in the same way as men.
Thank you. Now, we know that women's votes are important, and women's votes are particularly important because women make up 54% of the electorate. So there are more women voters than men voters. And that brings me to another question from our floor. Why should women vote for us? Let's start with Gillian.
You know, I used to say, you know, what people say, why did you vote Conservative? And I said, well, I got a calculator. I figured out that actually what you spend and what you can afford to do is a function of your economy. Mm-hmm. So the first thing is we should never forget that actually we need a strong economy to afford the public services that we need. And you've got to be able... And you've got to be able to cope to care. Yes. And women care about public services as much, if not more, than men. We rely on them. I mean, I've relied on public services my whole life, but you rely on them as a young mother with children, you rely very heavily on public services. As you get older, you rely very heavily on public services. Both my grandmothers ended up with dementia, and you know, we're in care homes not far away from here. You rely on these services all the way through your life, so you want them to be the best they can possibly be. And I just think we're much better at running the economy and running the public services, and we have to get that message across.
Thank you, Julian. I think there's no one in the room who would disagree with any of that. Miriam.
Well, I want to change the question slightly because I'm born and bred Yorkshire woman. Why should northern women vote Conservative? And I think because we have a government that is recognising the need that regions have to be brought up to the same economic level, the same investment that London and the South East have had. You know, and I'm absolutely delighted that Stocksbridge, part of my potential constituency, is going to receive £25 million of government funding for things like infrastructure, all the kinds of things that we desperately need up north. And those are the things that women on the doorstep say we need. Public transport, more money for schools. And this is the government that is determined to deliver those. And I think there's a real sense that this government under Boris Johnson recognises the kind of support that our towns and our regions need. So if you're a woman in the north, vote Conservative, because this is the way to improve our areas.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Siobhan, what do the women of Stroud tell you?
Well, most people on the doorsteps at the moment tell me they're naffed off with Parliament, so that's the main conversation. But, you know, I think what we haven't done as a party, that is not just speaking to women, is actually talk about our values. And Gillian touched on this earlier. You know, there isn't if we just talk about women, there isn't a woman who is not aspirational and ambitious for everybody in her life, and that is one of our values. There isn't a woman who isn't really thinking about personal responsibility and how to manage and juggle everything that's going on in a day or in a week. And actually, you know, I think it is right that women are more affected by public services, often rely on services, and I cannot believe that Jeremy Corbyn's big state, massive interference is going to make anybody's life any easier, but particularly for women. But what we do need to look at, and it's a policy I've been talking to people about across this conference and is actually childcare. But not just childcare, it's about people stepping out of work to do elderly care as well. And that invariably falls on women. We need a massive, bold policy to be able to have a good, strong offer to families who are caring in various different guises. And when you've got the Labour Party saying they're going to have universally free childcare, we know it's probably not deliverable, we know it's not sustainable, and we also know it's another one of their bribes tribes, but actually when you've got that as the flashing light, we've got to come up with something bolder. So, yes, we've got an awful lot to offer women. We do need to do more to explain our values and everything that underpins what we do, but we also need to think about some really strong policies that are going to pull people in on the doorsteps. So.
Thank you. Now we're coming towards the end of this panel, and I know everyone in the room is waiting for the main event of the day. Although I'm delighted with the turnout to discuss women's issues, but perhaps I could ask you all. I think the women have had the more support of anything all week, which is great. But perhaps I could ask you just to, in 1 minute, sum up what you think politics can do for women and women can do for politics.
Well, I think politics at its best gives us the opportunity to bring change. And as women, as mothers, as daughters, wives, partners, we are so invested in society, we're so invested in public services, we're invested in schools. And politics has the power to change those things. But if we don't speak up, if we don't have a voice, no one's going to speak for us. And I think, sometimes it takes some courage to get over that starting line, to stand, and being encouraged is so vital. But politics is the power to change, and all women want positive change. So there is definitely a role for women in politics.
Thank you. Siobhan?
Well, I think I would just appeal, actually, while I've got you all here, on 3 points. I think I never, ever, ever want to see the Conservative Party move to all women shortlists. I always want us to be selected on our merits. But we absolutely need to work together to make sure that does not come in. So I think to all the members in the room, whether it's mentoring, whether it's financial support going into Women to Win or the All Women, the Conservative Women's Organisation, anything that you can do, whether it's even having a word with yourself and having another think about how you are approaching selections in your area, you can do that work and we can create the culture change. To chairmen and women and the association executives, you have the real strong cards in this game, and I think it is really important, and the party will help you if you want to have a think about how we're selecting in our different areas. And then to anybody in the room, I've said this already, but this is your first time being asked to stand if you've ever thought about getting into politics at any level, and really do get involved. We're all here to help. So I think that's my main appeal for today.
Thank you. And Gillian.
The Conservative Party has not won a significant majority for decades, and we need to. And we need to more than ever, because we are facing the worst possible outcome for our country, which would be a Jeremy Corbyn-led government. So it is incumbent upon all of us to appeal across the 4 nations, across the United Kingdom, as broadly, as widely, and as deeply as we can. Now, politics is a contact sport, and politics is a team game. We're all part of the same team. That team needs to be bigger. We need more MPs in Parliament. Don't we know that every day going through the voting lobbies? But we also need more connection points. We need to have more broad appeal. And that involves getting a massive cross-section of candidates who have the ability, the skills, the drive and the passion to sell the Conservative values on the doorsteps up and down the country. And that means we need more women, we need more diverse candidates representing every part of the country, every different gender, every different nationality, ethnicity, and every other diversity indicator. So we need to be massively inclusive as a party. The more we do that, the sooner we do that, the bigger our majority will be.
Thank you, Julian. Well, I think we'd all agree that that has been a really useful and informative session where we've learned a lot about women's politics. I'd be grateful if you could show your appreciation for our fantastic panel, Miriam, Gillian and Siobhan. And it just falls to me to say, If you're a woman in the audience, or if you're a man who knows a brilliant woman in the audience or outside who could be the next party association chairman, the next regional chairman, the next parish council, the next district council, the next member of parliament, please ask her to stand. Ask her to put herself forward so that we can have more representation from women in every level of our party and in every level of government. Thank you.
Once we've got a feel, we can cover it. Like it's,
Then I saw her face. Now I'm a believer. Not a trace of doubt in my mind. I'm in love. I'm a believer. I couldn't leave her if I tried. I thought love was more or less a given thing. It seems the more I gave, the less I got. What's the use in trying? All you get is pain. When I needed sunshine, I got rain. Then I saw her face. Now I'm a believer. Not a trace of doubt in my mind. I'm in love. I'm a believer. I couldn't leave her if I tried. Mr. Blue, we're so pleased to be with you. Look around, see what you do. Everybody smiles at you.
The first step is the hardest, the challenge of what comes next. But the opportunities that come from stepping into the world make it worth it. No matter how big or small, the first step means something. Throughout the history of our country, the people who have taken bold steps are the ones who have taken Britain forward. The innovators, the entrepreneurs, the leaders. And now Britain is taking an ambitious leap into a brighter future where the opportunities are immense. The vote to leave the EU was the largest democratic exercise ever conducted in the history of our great country. It was a vote for change, a vote for a future built on hope, not fear, a vote for the very best of what Britain is and can be. But in the last 3 years, nothing has changed, and it's no wonder people are fed up with politicians. We are going to restore trust in our democracy. We will fulfill the promise Parliament made to the people. We will get Brexit done. Because getting Brexit done means we can focus on Britain's priorities once again. Safer streets, with 20,000 new police officers over the next 3 years. Better education, with more funding for every child. And improved hospitals, with record investment in our NHS. The naysayers will tell you that this is a time of fear and uncertainty and doom, but they are wrong. This is a time of hope and opportunity, a time when our shared future has so much potential. Britain, an open, outward-looking, dynamic, free-trading country, a country ever more united with better infrastructure, better education, and new technology. That is the Britain that we can build together. The path before us leads to a brighter future if we have the courage to take the first step. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you all very much. It's fantastic, of course, to be here in Manchester at the best attended conference for years. And I gather there was quite a lively mood last night in the hotel bars. And I want you to know, I understand that some of you may have been mildly peppered with abuse on the way in. Were you? Well, they're good. I'm delighted. I'm delighted that you weren't. But even if you were, I don't think any of us are abashed by that kind of thing or downcast, because we're Conservatives and we get on with serving the people of this country. And speaking of service, I should begin by paying tribute to my predecessor, Theresa May. I know the whole conference remains full of gratitude to you and to Philip May for your patience and your forbearance. And yes, we will continue with your work of tackling domestic violence and modern slavery and building on your legacy. I've been Prime Minister for only 70 days, but I've seen so many things that give me cause for hope. Hospitals that are finally getting the investment to match the devotion of the staff. Schools where standards of reading are rising through the use of synthetic phonics. Police colleges where idealistic young men and women are enrolling in large numbers now to fight crime across the country. Shipyards in Scotland that are building superb modern Type 26 frigates for sale around the world. And every one of those high-wage, high-skilled jobs in shipbuilding, in government, is a testament to the benefits of belonging to the United Kingdom. The most successful political partnership in history, which we will protect and defend against those who would wantonly destroy it. And I say to Ruth Davidson as well, thank you, Ruth, for everything you did and have done for the cause of conservatism in Scotland, and we will honour your legacy too. And I'm proud of the role that this government is playing in every one of those investments. And of course, they are only possible because it was this Conservative government that tackled the debt and the deficit left behind by the last Labour government. It was because we cleared up the wreckage they left behind that we now have record employment, wages rising the fastest for 10 years, and we have record foreign direct investment of £1.3 trillion, more than any other country in the EU. So we have so many reasons to be confident about our country and its direction, and yet I feel sometimes we're like a world-class athlete with a pebble in our shoe. There is one part of the British system that seems to be on the blink. If Parliament were a laptop, then the screen would be showing, I'm afraid, the pizza wheel of doom. If Parliament were a school, Ofsted would be shutting it down or putting it in special measures. If Parliament were a reality TV show, then the whole lot of us, I'm afraid, would have been voted out of the jungle by now. But at least we'd have had the consolation of watching the Speaker being forced to eat a kangaroo testicle. And, the sad truth is that voters have more say. Voters have more say over I'm a celebrity than they do over this House of Commons, which refuses to deliver Brexit, refuses to do anything constructive and refuses to have an election. Just at the moment, when voters are desperate for us to focus on their priorities, we're continuing to chew the super-masticated subject of Brexit, when what people want, what Leavers want, what Remainers want, what the whole world wants, is to be calmly and sensibly done with the subject and to move on. And that is why we are coming out of the EU on October the 31st, come what may. Conference. Let's get Brexit done. We can, we must, and we will, even though things have not been made easier by the surrender bill. We will work for a deal with our EU friends, but whatever happens, we must come out by the end of October. Let's get this thing done, and then let's get ready to make our case to the country against the fratricidal anti-Semitic Marxists who were in Brighton last week. Last week, Jeremy Corbyn had a number of damaging and retrograde ideas in his speech. He wants a 4-day week, which would slash the wages of people on low incomes. He wants to ban private schools and expropriate their property, even though it would cost the taxpayer £7 billion to educate the kids. He wants to stamp out excellence in schools by banning Ofsted, the inspectors who ensure that schools are safe for our children. But he had one good idea. He had a whole paragraph repeating what he has said every week for the last 3 years. He wants an election now. or that is what he was going to say. Poor fellow. The only trouble is that the paragraph was censored by John McDonnell or possibly Keir Starmer, so we have the astonishing spectacle of the leader of the opposition gagged and prevented by his colleagues from engaging in his constitutional function, which is to try to remove me from office. And in this age of creative litigation, I'm surprised that no one has yet sued him for breach of contract. Though it now appears that the SNP may try to bundle him toward the throne, like some Konstantin Chernenko figure. Look it up. Reluctantly propelled to office in a Kremlin coup, so that they can get on with their program of total national discord, turning the whole of 2020, which should be a great year for this country, into the chaos and cacophony of 2 more referendums. A second referendum on Scottish independence, even though the people of Scotland were promised that the 2014 vote would be a once-in-a-generation decision, and a second referendum on the EU. I mean, can you imagine another 3 years of this? But that is the Corbyn agenda. Stay in the EU beyond October the 31st, paying £1 billion a month for the privilege, followed by years of uncertainty for business and everyone else. As for the Lib Dems, their idea of serving the national interest was to write to Jean-Claude Juncker, urging him not to give this country a better deal. Well, when the leader of the Liberal Democrats has called for a second referendum while pledging to campaign against the result. It's time to respect the Trade Subscriptions Act, my friends, and take the word Democrat out of Liberal Democrats. I'm afraid... After 3 years... After 3.5 years, people are beginning to feel that they are being taken for fools, and they're beginning to suspect that there are forces in this country that simply don't want Brexit delivered at all. And if they turn out to be right in that suspicion, then I believe there will be grave consequences for trust in our democracy. Let's get Brexit done on October the 31st. Let's get it done because of the opportunities that it will bring, not just to take back control of our money, and our borders and our laws, to regulate differently and better, to take our place as a proud and independent global campaigner for free trade. Let's get it done because delay is so pointless and expensive and debilitating. Let's get it done because we need to build our positive new partnership with the EU. Because it cannot be stressed too much that this is not an anti-European party. This is not an anti-European country. We are European. We love Europe. I love Europe anyway. I love it. But after 45 years of really dramatic constitutional change in our relationships, we must have a new relationship with the EU, a positive and confident partnership, and we can do it. And today in Brussels, we are tabling what I believe are constructive and reasonable proposals, which provide a compromise for both sides. We will, under no circumstances, have checks at or near the border in Northern Ireland. We will respect the peace process and the Good Friday Agreement. And by a process of renewable democratic consent by the Executive and the Assembly of Northern Ireland, we will go further and protect the existing regulatory arrangements for farmers and businesses on both sides of the border. And at the same time, we will allow the UK, whole and entire, to withdraw from the EU with control over our own trade policy from the start. And we will protect our precious union between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And yes, this is a compromise by the UK, and I hope very much that our friends understand that and compromise in their turn. Because if we fail to get an agreement because of what is essentially a technical discussion on the exact nature of future customs checks, when that technology is improving the whole time, then let us be in no doubt, conference, of what the alternative is. The alternative is no deal. And that is not an outcome we want. It is not an outcome we seek at all. But let me tell you, my friends, it is an outcome for which we are ready. Are we ready for it? Yes, we are. Are we determined to resolve this? Yes, we are. Let's get Brexit done by October the 31st, because we have to get on and deliver on the priorities of the people. To answer the cry of those 17.4 million who voted for Brexit, because it is only by delivering Brexit that we can address that feeling in so many parts of the country that they've been left behind, ignored, that their towns were not only suffering from a lack of love and investment, but their views had become somehow unfashionable or unmentionable. And let's get Brexit done for those millions who may have voted Remain, but who are first and foremost Democrats. And who accept the result of the referendum and want to get on. And when I say that I want us to work together now to bring this country together, of course you're entitled, it's the first time I've spoken to you as party leader and Prime Minister at this conference, you're entitled to ask about my core principles and the ideals that drive me and are going to drive me as your Prime Minister. And I'm going to follow the example of my friend Sajid Javid, who gave a brilliant speech. I'm going to quote that supreme authority in my family, my mother. And I know that there are some keen students of alleged divisions in my family on matters of the EU. But I want you to know, conference, that I have kept my ace up my sleeve. My mother voted leave. And my mother... It's true. It's true. It's true. My mother taught me one thing. She taught me many things, but she taught me to believe strongly in the equal importance, the equal dignity, and the equal worth of every human being on the planet. And now, that may sound banal. That may sound banal. That may sound trite, but it is not. It is not. You have to understand that and believe in that. And there is one institution in this country that sums up that idea. The NHS is holy to the people of this country because of the simple beauty of its principle. That it doesn't matter who you are or where you come from, but when you are sick, the whole country figuratively gathers at your bedside and does everything it can to make you well again. And everybody pays to ensure that you have the best doctors and the best nurses and the most effective treatments known to medical science. And after 70 years, the results are, on the whole, amazing. When I was a kid, the word cancer was a death knell. Heart attack was a terrifying thought. Well, we are slowly beating back the legions of disease. This country has seen the fastest falls in breast cancer in Europe, but we have so much more to do. On Monday, I went to the North Manchester General Hospital, and I saw the incredible work that they are doing with maxillofacial reconstructive surgery on people who only a decade ago would have been probably permanently disfigured by their traumas. People for whom hope and confidence is so important. And I talked to the patients, every one of them bursting with praise for the staff, for their energy and care. But that conference, that fantastic hospital, was built in 1876 to serve the workhouse. And we were walking down long, narrow Nightingale wards that were designed by the pioneer of nursing. And as one of the managers told me, it's asking professionals to work in that environment is like asking a Premiership footballer to play on a ploughed field. And so I was proud to tell them that under this government, we will totally rebuild that hospital. And thanks to the work of Health Secretary Matt Hancock, we're not only recruiting more doctors and nurses and training them, but in the next 10 years, we will build 40 new hospitals in the biggest investment in hospital infrastructure for a generation. Because after 70 years of the existence of the NHS, 44 of them under a Conservative government, it is time for us to say loud and clear, we are the party of the NHS. And I claim that title. I claim that title because it is our one nation conservatism that has delivered and will deliver the economic growth that makes those investments possible. And it is we Conservatives too who will solve the problems of social care and end the injustice that means so many people have to sell their home to pay for their old age. And if you ask me, how are we going to do it? How are we going to pay for it all? How are we going to grow the UK economy? I will tell you, it is by raising the productivity of the whole of the UK, not with socialism, not with the deranged and ruinous plans borrowed from the playbook of Bolivarian revolutionary Venezuela, but by creating the economic platform for dynamic, free market capitalism. Yes. You heard that right. When did you last hear a Tory leader talk about capitalism? We are the party of the NHS precisely because we are the party of capitalism, not because we shun it or despise it. And we understand the vital symmetry at the heart of the modern British economy between a dynamic enterprise culture and great public services. And I, of course, I've seen that formula in action for a long time myself. Now, who comes from London? Hands up. It's all right, it's all right. Who lives there? Don't worry, nothing, no disgrace. I used to be mayor. There. It's one of the fantastic place, greatest city on earth, greatest city on earth. And it's one of the many astonishing things about our nation's capital. It is the most productive region in the whole of Europe. For lots of reasons, in 1863, amongst other things, we were the first place to think of putting trains in tunnels and that kind of thing. And yet there are many other regions of the country that are far less productive. And that represents not just an injustice, though of course it does, but a massive opportunity. Because I believe that talent and genius and chutzpah are evenly distributed across the UK, but it is also clear that opportunity is not evenly distributed. And it is the job of this One Nation Conservative government to unlock talent in every corner of the UK. Because that is the right thing to do in itself, and because that is the right way to release the economic potential of the whole country. And the first thing you've got to do, basic hygiene, if you're going to spread opportunity, is to insist on the equal safety of everybody's street wherever they live. And that's why we're recruiting 20,000 police officers. Thank you, Pretty, and indeed thank you, Saj. And that is why we are committed to rolling up the evil county lines drugs gangs. The evil county lines drugs gangs that predate on young kids and send them to die in the streets to feed the cocaine habits of the bourgeoisie, and we will succeed. And yes, we will be tough on crime. We will make sure that the police have the legal powers and the political backing to use stop and search, because it may be controversial. It may be controversial. It has to be done politely and in accordance with the law. But believe me, when a young man, and I'm afraid it's almost invariably a young man, is going equipped with a bladed weapon, there is nothing kinder or more loving or more life-saving you can do than to ask him to turn out his pockets and produce that weapon. And yes, when people are found guilty of serious sexual or violent offences, we will make sure that they serve the sentence they should, if only for the protection of the public. But we will also, as One Nation Conservatives, do everything we can to stop people becoming criminals, with rehabilitation, with education in prisons, so that they are not just academies for crime, but also by investing in youth clubs and better FE funding, further education funding, to give young people the best possible antidote to the criminal instinct. That is the prospect of a good job. And indeed, the best way to level up and expand opportunity is to give every kid in the country a superb education. So that's why That's why we're levelling up education funding across the country, with the schools that have fallen furthest behind now seeing the biggest increases, so that every child has the chance they deserve to express their talents. And it's so that they can get the jobs that we are creating. It's so that they can get the fantastic jobs that we are creating that we're improving connectivity, investing in transport, a fantastic project of Northern Powerhouse Rail that is now getting the go-ahead from Manchester to Leeds, just the first leg, and of course a huge new programme of rail, not of rail improvements, but of course of road improvements as well. And I'm thinking of the M60, the A66, what are the other ones, Sad? You recited them all yesterday. The A358, the A303. They're huge. The Lincoln roundabout. There's a huge range of things that we will be investing in now. And furthermore, I admit, and it's been exposed in the past. I'm a bit of a bus nut. And I confess that I like to make and to paint slightly inexact, very inexact, models of buses with happy passengers inside. I'm actually more interested in the passengers than the buses, but never mind. It's not just that I am a bus nut that we want to expand, just because I'm a bus nut that we want to expand bus transport. We want to make our buses cleaner, greener, zero carbon, zero emission across the country with contactless payment by card or by phone, so that people want to use those services. We get the cars off the roads, we reduce congestion, we reduce pollution, and a good bus service can make all the difference to your job, to your life, to your ability to get to the doctor, to the livability of your town or your village, and indeed to your ability to stay there and start a family, have a business there. And it's for exactly that reason, to increase connectivity and livability, that we are now accelerating the program for gigabit broadband so fast. And well, it's going to be... To be truthful, I'm not entirely sure of the exact technical details of gigabit broadband, but we're bringing it forward by 8 years, and it will mean that everybody has, not just super fast, but incredibly fast, speed of light broadband spreading into every home in the country like super informative vermicelli, and bringing people together, giving people opportunity, giving people certainty that they can, as I say, start a business, raise their family where they are. And that is the way, I think, with better connectivity, with better transport, better education, to unite the country and to bring it together. But there's, of course, another vital effect of the right infrastructure and the right technology. You increase the productivity of the whole UK economy. If the streets are safe, if the transport links are there, if you have good Wi-Fi, good broadband connections, what else do you allow to happen? Eddie? You allow new housing to go ahead. Huge numbers of new houses on brownfield sites that were never considered viable before. And that's the way forward. And you allow young people to get a foot on the housing ladder. And you allow young people to live near the good jobs. And above all, with safe streets and affordable housing and fantastic Wi-Fi, we give, as I say, business the confidence to invest and to grow. And that is the virtuous circle, the balance and the symmetry at the heart of our One Nation project. And there are so many ways in which this country is pulling ahead. London has overtaken New York as the #1 city for investment in fintech firms. And that's before we've even delivered Crossrail, which, by the way, was on time and on budget when the last mayor left office. And isn't it time? Isn't it time we had a mayor? Isn't it time we had a mayor who is focused on the job of running London? And isn't it time? Isn't it time we got behind our fantastic candidate, Sean Bailey? Let's back Bailey for London in 2020. And here in Manchester, things are stormy ahead. We're seeing an extraordinary growth in genomics, a flood of inward investment from banking and insurance to IT. And that's before we've delivered Northern Powerhouse Rail, linking up the whole of the northern region in the way that we're going to do. In the West Midlands, we are already seeing a 21st century industrial revolution in battery and low carbon technology, just as the West Midlands led the world in the previous industrial revolution, the 19th century. Absolutely true. 1 in 5 electric vehicles sold in Europe is now made in this country. It's a fantastic thing, and we're going to increase it. We're going to accelerate. We are going to have a battery gigafactory. And that is before we have even begun with Mayor Andy Street's brilliant vision of a West Midlands metro system. That's the future. It's a linking up the urban centres of the West Midlands in the way that needs to be done. That's what we Conservatives are going to do. It's always Conservatives who lead the way on great infrastructure projects. And with infrastructure, education, technology, we are going to drive up the productivity of this country and bring it together. Now look, I don't for one moment doubt the patriotism of everybody on all sides of the Brexit argument, but I'm fed up myself of being told that our country can't do something when I passionately believe that it can. And thanks to British technology, there is a place in Oxfordshire, my former constituency actually, in Oxfordshire, that could be soon the hottest place in the solar system. In fact, I think they told me it was already the hottest place when I went there. It is the tokamak fusion reactor in Culham. And if you go there, you'll be told that this country has a global lead in fusion research and that they are on the verge of creating commercially viable miniature fusion reactors for sale around the world. Delivering virtually unlimited zero-carbon power. Now, I know that they have been on the verge for some time. It's a pretty spacious kind of verge. But I think they tell me now they're really on the verge of the verge. But I remember, all you skeptics, I remember it was only a few years ago when people were saying that solar power would never work in cloudy old UK. And they said that wind turbines would never pull the skin off a rice pudding, remember that? Well, there are some days now when wind and solar power are delivering more than half our energy needs. And we're going to be zero carbon neutral by 2050. We can do it. With new technology, we can do it. We can become carbon neutral by 2050. We can beat the skeptics. We're already using gene therapy to cure blindness. This country leads the world in satellite technology, and we're building 2 spaceports, one in Sutherland and one in Newquay. And soon we'll be... Thank you. The whole of the UK is going to benefit from these investments. And soon we will be sending missions to the heavens, geostationary satellites, which will be, by the way, infrastructure in space. It will be of huge value to this country. Now, conference, can you think of anyone who could trial the first mission? Can you think which communist cosmonaut we should coax into the cockpit? Well, there you go. The invitation is there. Let's get Brexit done on October the 31st. Not just because we have such an immense agenda to take this country forward, but because, of course, Brexit is an opportunity in itself. We will take back control of our fisheries and the extraordinary marine wealth of Scotland, and it's one of the many bizarre features of the SNP, that in spite of being called names like salmon and sturgeon, they are committed to handing back control. They want to hand back control of those fish to the EU. Alistair, we want to turbocharge the Scottish fishing sector. They would allow Brussels to charge for our turbot. You could see that one coming. You could see. But it's true. It's true. We will be able to allow UK business, when we leave the EU, we'll be able to allow UK businesses and manufacturers to have bigger tax breaks for the investments they make in capital and new technology. We can, out of the EU, we can do free ports. We can use the tax regime to do free ports and new enterprise zones. We can ban the cruel shipment of live animals that has offended the British people for so long. And yes, we will have those free trade deals. We already have some astonishing exports, as I never tire of telling you. Just in the last few months, I've seen an Isle of Wight shipbuilder that exports vast aluminium leisure catamarans to Mexico. We export Jason Donovan CDs to North Korea, would you believe it? And we exported Nigel Farage briefly to America, though he seems to have come back. Across the world, there are countries, and anybody who's involved in the foreign side, anybody who travels abroad will testify to this. Across the world, there are countries that are yearning to engage with us, where we have old friendships and burgeoning new partnerships. And particularly in the Commonwealth, was that pretty? Heckling me from the front, interjecting from the front from a sedentary position. You're quite right, the Commonwealth. 2.4 billion people, the fastest growing economies in the world. Amazing opportunities. And that is our vision for Britain, a country that is open, outward-looking, global in mindset, insisting on free trade. A high-wage, low-tax, high-skill, high-productivity economy with incomes rising fastest for those who are lowest paid. A country where we level up and unify the entire United Kingdom through better education, better infrastructure and technology. A country where, provided you obey the law and do no harm to others, you can live your life and love whomsoever you choose. A country that leads the way with clean, green technology and reducing the greenhouse gases that cause climate change. A country that is happy and confident about its future. That is the vision for the country we love. And when the opposition finally screw their courage to the sticking point and agree to have an election, when the chlorinated chickens finally waddle from the hen coop where they are hiding, that is the vision for the country that we will put to the British people. And the choice is clear. We put up wages with the biggest expansion of the living wage for a generation. Corbyn would put up taxes for everyone. We back our superb armed forces around the world. And look after our veterans. Corbyn has said he wants the armed forces disbanded. We want an Australian-style points-based system for immigration. Corbyn has said he doesn't even believe in immigration controls. If Jeremy Corbyn were allowed into Downing Street, he would whack up your taxes, he would foul up the economy, he would rip up the alliance between Britain and the United States, and he would break up the United Kingdom. We cannot allow it to happen. But it is worse than that, because it's become absolutely clear that he's now determined to frustrate Brexit. What do we want and need? Do we want more dither and delay? Do we want to spend another £1 billion a month on EU membership when that could be going on the NHS? No. Let's get Brexit done. Let's finally believe in ourselves and what we can do. This country has long been a pioneer. We inaugurated the steam age, I think here in Manchester. We inaugurated the atomic age, the age of the genome. We led the way in parliamentary democracy, in female emancipation. And when the whole world had succumbed to a different economic fashion, this country and this party, under a female prime minister, pioneered ideas of free markets and privatization that spread across the planet. Every one of those ideas was controversial. Every one of them was difficult. But we always had the courage as a country to be original, to do things differently. And now we are about to take another giant step, to do something no one thought we could do, to reboot our politics, to relaunch ourselves into the world, and to dedicate ourselves again to the simple proposition that we are here to serve the democratic will of the British people. And if we do that with optimism, and confidence, then I tell you, we will not go wrong. So let's get on with sensible, moderate, one nation, but tax-cutting Conservative government, and figuratively, if not literally, let us send Jeremy Corbyn into orbit where he belongs. Conference, let's get Brexit done, and let's bring this country together. Thank you very much.